Brad, welcome. Thank you so much, and I will hand it off to you.
No, no worries. Thank you so much. Let me just make sure that I can get the presentation up so that everyone can see it. How does that look? Can you see the presentation? You can see me?
Yes, that looks good to me.
All right, great. No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love doing these speaking engagements. It was great to speak at local U. I'm actually at Brighton SEO right now. Just coming off the back of a presentation that I gave yesterday. But today I'm going to be talking about navigating the minefield. Where in this analogy, the minefield is Google Business Profile support. I am, as you just heard, the former director of operations for the Google Business Profile, where the support organization was part of my responsibilities. And so, what I'd like to do is just really kind of take the moment to talk through how support was designed, why I designed it the way that I did, and then really kind of like transition into the top issues that I've been seeing upon leaving Google, and give you some recommendations on how you can actually navigate through those issues. And then I'll close out by giving you some recommendations on how to communicate with Google effectively and kind of like speak their language to maximize your chance that you'll be able to get your issue resolved in a speedy amount of time. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to start with kind of walking you through the philosophy of how GBP support was designed, and this I think will hopefully give you good visibility into how it's designed to work and why it operates the way that it does. So this slide is a slide I think that really depicts the thought model that I had, the mental model of how to design Google support. So it starts with product improvement, where my philosophy, thinking about it as a funnel analogy, is that the best support that you can have in the world is support that you don't need because the product just works, right? The product works great and you don't need support. Sounds great. I know that's not very realistic, but in order to try and try and achieve the vision of a perfect product, I had a team within Google support that was dedicated to improving the product, and so they would look at all of the support issues that the volumes, they would look at the volume of issues that were coming in, and they would work directly with the product management organization to fix those issues that were causing the cases to be created in the first place. And verification was one of those things. Like, how do we fix verification? Because we know that it's a tremendous pain. And so like looking at the large volumes of support cases that would come in, and then we would kind of strategize with the product organization and influence them into resolving the issues such that it would bring down our case volume, save Google cost, but more importantly, prevent issues from happening in the first place. So I had a team focused on that. Now, if I couldn't do that, if I couldn't fix the product so that it just worked and no one had any issues ever, then the next step in the funnel was to help users help themselves. And so we managed the support help center. That is the site that you get when you go to support.google.com/business. That is the Google Business Profile Help Center. And so I had a team of people that would build content, write content for that help center. We would watch the trending. We would guide people through troubleshooting steps, and really try and optimize the amount of information that we could provide that helped users help themselves. And we had some interesting statistics here as well, where we could see if someone was kind of like searching for a particular issue, like how do I upload a photo or something like that, did they actually land on the upload photo help center page? And then we could look at the logs in the back end to determine, did they actually upload a photo? Were they successful in completing that task. And we had an internal metric that we referred to as task completion that would allow us to identify whether that article was effective or not. And that feature actually came in really helpful as we started building out the automation layer, right? Because if we couldn't fix the product so that the issue didn't occur, and users were either unable to figure out how to resolve the issue themselves, or they didn't try and they just went straight to the contact button, then the next step in the process was human-based support. Like a ticket was created, a case was created, and it was allocated to a human, and the human would then go through and troubleshoot and try and resolve it. Um, we introduced a new layer in between self-help and human support, and that was automation. And the hypothesis of automation was really to kind of like to resolve issues that were educational in nature. So we weren't trying to automate everything. We had this infrastructure in place where we could track what was the user reported symptom. So like, what do we think the issue is? We were then able to code it internally to say what was the actual problem. And then we were able to categorize these cases into what did we need to do to resolve the issue. So what was the steps that we had to take to resolve the issue to the client's satisfaction. And so when we went through that process and we did some post case analysis, we'd be able to categorize those cases into resolutions that were educational in nature. So like the way that we resolved that issue is we told the user how to do something. So like, if the question we got, and I know it's a very simple example, but if the case was created and the request was, how do I upload a photo, then the resolution was to educate the user on how to upload the photo. Like, we wouldn't do it for them. We would just say, go to this website, click on this button, plug in your photo, make sure it's these dimensions, and then you're good to go. So it was education in nature. So we considered those education user journeys to be in scope for automation, so that we could provide customized step-by-step instructions on how to resolve that issue, and the support would be as good, if not better, than a human agent. If, on the other hand, it was a support issue that required Google to do something, right? Like the user or the business was unable to resolve it on their own, then we would optimize the route to go to a human agent, right? So we wouldn't even attempt to automate it, go straight to a human agent and try and optimize it as well. So that was kind of the philosophy of how we design support. Fix the product. If you can't do that, provide self-help. If you can't do that, automate. If you can't do that, then it goes through to a human. And ideally, we would see kind of like the volumes of support cases start trailing off as you move from one stage to the next. And so the way that we implemented that solution, this automation technology, was you're probably all familiar with the screen on the left. This is the contact us form that you get when you go to support.google.com, and you plug in your issue, right? Like, there's a question there. Tell me what we can help you with. You type in a couple of words, and it pops up with a couple of chips. I'm going to zoom in on this for a second. So, sorry. So these are kind of the chips, as we call them, that you can select after you type in the issue. This is where you're basically telling Google what the symptom is. And you click on one of these chips, and that's very important for you to understand, because what chip you select in this case will determine the treatment of that particular support interaction, right? Where, if the symptom is an education-based user journey, it's likely going to be automated, and we'll do email only, because we only really have the capability to do email only support through automation. If, on the other hand, it is a high profile issue that only Google can resolve, then additional contacts options will be available. This is how we kind of structured it, right? So this is the breakdown, where if it was considered a troubleshooting case, that we would consider that to be a priority 0, P0. The category of that was the issues that users cannot resolve themselves. Google has to take some action. And if that is the type of issue that we're trying to solve, then we will offer phone, email, and chat support. If it's an education-based user journey, we realized that there's two different flavors of education-based user journey. There's very simple education-based user journeys. How do I change the cover photo on my profile? And then there's more complex education user journeys. And so because of that reason, we actually broke the priority one, the P1s, into two subcategories. We broke them up into P1A and P1B. And the idea here was that if it was like a fairly complex education-based user journey, navigating complications with verification, dealing with ownership conflict, where someone is the owner of your listing and you need access and you need to kind of like navigate that ownership conflict process, it's fairly complicated. So for those user journeys, we would also offer phone, email, and chat support. And then for the more simple education-based user journeys, we would do email only. We would attempt to do automation on those cases where in the email that we send out, we would have step-by-steps. We'll try to personalize it as best we can, step-by-step instructions on here's how you resolve that particular issue. But if the user selected the wrong symptom chip, or they were unable, for whatever reason, to resolve the issue based on those set of instructions, we do allow the user to reply to that email. And at that point, that email goes directly to a human, and the human will then diagnose the issue. What we found in that particular journey is that most of the time, the user had selected the incorrect chip, the incorrect symptom at the beginning of the journey. So the attempt to automate, of course, was going to fail because we were giving instructions on how to solve the wrong thing. So that was also what we would tune that to try and make our symptom chips more precise. And the more precise we could get in identifying the root cause of the issue, the higher the probability that we'd be able to automate or provide instructions on how to resolve the issue yourself without the need of any human agents. And then the last category was the priority number two, the P2s, and those were the out of scope issues, right? And this is where we would get questions: how do I improve my ranking? How do I become number one on Google? Now, the support agents can't give you any additional information on the influencing factors on rank that is not already been publicly published on the news source, on our website and help center. So this isn't really a good use of support agents' time. You're not going to get any new information. It's not a good use of time for the user. It's not a good use of time for the agent. So for those cases, we sent out an automated reply with the baseline information about that we can provide around improving rank. And those emails were sent from a no reply email alias. So like you couldn't actually reply and get to a human on that case. Now, we designed this infrastructure, probably around 5 years ago. I reckon it was around, like 2020 when we started implementing this structure. And what I have noticed in the last 2 years, I think I left Google last year. And, I think I was a voice in the support architecture to try and maintain a healthy balance of this. What I've seen nowadays is that a lot of these symptoms are moving into different categories. So like I'm seeing, ownership conflict, they now have an automated process to do that. And so it's no longer considered a P1A scenario. It's probably a P1B. Even they may even kick you out to the automated process and not even allow access to an agent. So I've seen support get much more strict, and moving issues around from one category to the next, and that actually dramatically changes the type of support that you're eligible for, right? And so I've noticed that phone and chats have to have a user journey and select the appropriate chip in the support process that would then activate that type of support channel. So kind of like knowing how the support architecture was built, and maybe hopefully giving you a tip as to how to kind of like leverage the support architecture to be able to get access to a human, hopefully. I'm going to dive a little bit into the three major types of issues that I've been seeing, both inside and outside of Google, but I've had to experience it firsthand, being on the other side of the coin for the last 18 months. And so those three issues, that I'm going to dive into a little bit more here is verifications, suspensions, and reviews. They're the three heavy issues, more complicated issues. So the first one is verification. And so this one here is, in order to know how to resolve verification issues, you first have to understand what is Google verifying. And so it's really only verifying two things, right? It's attempting to verify that the business exists in the real world, right? And that is both in the form of, is it a legitimate business? Does the business exist? And does that business exist at that physical location in the world, right? And that's, primarily for storefront businesses, but the same holds true for service area businesses. Like, do you service San Diego? Do you, are you located on the corner of First Street and Broadway, right? Like, and so the existence of the business is the first thing that the Google is trying to verify. The second thing they're trying to verify is your affiliation with that business. It's really easy to prove that there's a McDonald's sitting on the corner of, A Street and B Street. But what authority do I have to manage that business? That's what the affiliation is looking to prove. And so, are you able to represent that business? Can I hand you the keys to the Google Business Profile and allow you to start making changes? Or am I handing the keys to someone who has no real authority over that business? So, they're the two things that Google is trying to verify. And so, as you go through the verification process, there are actually different forms and methods of verification. Real-time verification is by far the easiest and the best. And when I was working at Google and trying to at the top of the funnel that I just described, where it's like we want to resolve issues before they happen, fix the product so you don't run into any issues. There was a big investment in trying to figure out how to solve the verification challenge. And postcard verification was the biggest challenge that we were trying to overcome. And so we were experimenting with different ways to do that. And real-time verification is actually a really great way where, if you have a lot of information about the business that already exists around the internet, like there's other third-party sources that Google can verify the existence of that business, then we don't really have to worry about existence. And all we really want to try and do here is prove the affiliation. And the way that we do that is that we're going to call the phone number that we have in our own database. And if you answer the phone, then now I've proven affiliation. And or if you answer an email from that company domain, then I know you have affiliation. So real-time verification is the easiest and the best, but it's only available when Google already knows information about your business, and it can pre-verify that against an existing data source. So that's the best, but for brand new businesses, that's often not available. Where we see business video verification being predominantly what most new businesses see when trying to verify a business. We experimented with business video verification for a long time before we graduated it to be a replacement for postcard-based verification. And in fact, the initial iteration of the BVV, of the business video verification, was the live video verification. That was what we started experimenting with first. Internally, we called that on-demand video verification, or ODVV, because Google has to give an acronym for everything. And so the live video verification was where we had agents that would get on a live video chat with the potential business, walk them through what they needed to see, And then they could do verification on the spot. And you know, in the scenario where it worked really well. But we also had complications of, you know, if you had poor internet or cell signal or anything, then videos would drop, they wouldn't upload, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. So business video verification was the one that we kind of transitioned to. You could do that without relying on an internet signal. We could kind of like cache that information and then upload it. So that is the replacement for postcard-based verification. Now, the one that I wanted to try and draw a bit more attention to today is that there is also a fourth option for verification, and that is manual or offline verification. And a lot of people don't know this exists. And the reason they don't know it exists is because it's hidden. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a window into how to find it, right? So if you go to the support website, right, support.google.com/business, and if you type in verification as your issue, you will see internally we call this an authorizable workflow. You can see that because it's kind of got this little diamond icon next to it in the results, and it says check your verification status. When you click on that, you're taken to this authorizable workflow, which is a tool that my team at Google built. The first step is to kind of like confirm the user account that has access to the listing that you're trying to verify. That will take you to the next step. You then select the profile that you're trying to get verified, click continue. And when you get through that process, you'll get to a page where it'll say check your verification status. And at the bottom of that, you'll see two links there. The first one says send feedback, and the other one says select another business. Now, if you reach this page, this is an indicator that for that particular profile, you have not even attempted video verification. This is one of the conditions of manual-based verification. And I remember having this conversation with the PM director, because what they were saying is that we don't want to make offline manual verification available to everyone. We first want them to at least attempt video verification. So if you hit this screen, it means Google believes that you haven't even attempted video verification. So you've got to go back and try video verification for the first time. If you do that, and then you come back through this process and you get to the same screen, instead of saying send feedback, it now says contact us. Because once you've gone through the video verification, if it's successful, great, you're done. If it's unsuccessful, then it flips a bit in the back end of the database that now makes manual-based verification eligible. And that is how you go through this flow. And now it says contact us as opposed to send feedback. When you click on that contact us button, it actually takes you to a form where it requests the information that Google requires to do an offline review of that listing. So you just tell them that you're trying to get your profile verified. It gives you a list of opportunities to upload information, pictures of the tooling, equipment. These questions change somewhat depending on if it's a storefront business versus a service area business. So just follow the instructions, make sure that you have the necessary evidence to submit, drop that all in there, submit, and then that review is done offline, and chances are you'll be able to get verified within a day. So given that breakdown of verifications, I want to give you 5 tips on how to help you with verification, primarily for agencies that are dealing with this for a lot of their clients. So tip number 1 is be prepared, right? Like you need to make sure that as you're going through the verification process, that you have all the information that you need in order to verify before you hit the verify now button. Number 2 is making sure that you have the right type of evidence, right? So if issue 1 is like, make sure you've got the evidence with you. Tip 2 is make sure that it is the right type of evidence. And, I've kind of loosely organized the different types of evidence into 2 categories. I have a level 1 evidence and a level 2 evidence, where the level 1 or the primary evidence is usually from an authoritative source. So a business license that is granted to you from a government entity, the state of California or wherever you may be. If you're operating under a DBA, make sure that you include your legal use of the name of the profile, right? If the name of the profile is different from the name of the business, provide the trade name agreement. A utility bill is also really important, and you've probably heard Google request this, but I want to explain why. Because a utility bill, it proves all three of the things, both elements of existence and affiliation in one document, right? So if you've got a utility bill, it has hopefully the name of the business and the address, which proves the existence of that business. And it also improves affiliation, because if you have that piece of paper, then it kind of proves that you have access to the mail, which is then an authoritative position in that company. And if it's coming from a government entity, like a utility bill typically comes from the state of California, Southern California Edison, like different like entities. The water company is run by the state. So the person that's generating that bill is an authoritative figure and something that Google can independently verify. That's why that's primary level evidence. It's really high level of authority. If you don't have that though, and you go to the secondary level, like even a lease agreement, it's good because it proves that you own the business or own the building, or maybe you're leasing it, so it's a rental agreement. The complication with that is that it can be forged really easily because it's not really coming from an authoritative source. So if you're providing other level of evidence, internet bills, phone bills, like even if it's like Verizon or AT&T or something like that, it may not be a government entity, but it is a well-known organization, so it increases in authority. So make sure that you have the right type of evidence. Issue number 3, really practice and script the video that you're about to take through video verification. So I like to provide my clients a shot list, and I give them a script, and I'm like, start with the street signs. That's going to prove your existence in the world, and it's going to allow the Google support agent to place your business in the physical world, right? So great, street signs are important. Show your business with permanent signage. Temporary signage isn't going to cut it. You need to be able to show that it's permanently a fixture there. Show access to the building, right? That's where you're proving the affiliation. And then finally, show documentation, right? Like the legality of it all. If you can do that, you can do that usually in about 2 minutes. Chances are you're going to master the one-take video, and it'll go through real smooth. Improve your trust score, right? Like this is where Google really leans into who is making the change, who is performing the verification. And if it's a high trust account, it's more likely to get approved. So make sure, like, ways to do this, improving not only the trust of the person doing the verification, but also the trust of the business. And a big way to do that is to make sure that all the information that you're using in your profile is already on your website, or throughout. If you do citations and you're listed in directories, make sure that all the relevant information is consistent in those directories, because Google will use that as a validation. And so, if you do a little bit of pre-work and make sure that your website is updated and the citations are updated before you do your GBP, it'll grease the hinges and everything will run a lot smoother. And then finally, like, avoid red flags. I've got a lot of businesses that come to me because they were suspended, because they were registered in a virtual office. Spoiler alert, Google knows where all the Regises are. So if you put an address on your profile that is within a Regis location, chances are they're going to suspend you. Now, it's not a violation to be in a Regis if it's a dedicated office space, right? But if you're using their virtual facilities, or maybe using Regis just as a mailbox, right, then it's not it doesn't qualify for GBP, and you're going to get suspended. All right, so that's my verification tips. I'm going to move on to suspension tips. So in order to kind of talk a little bit about suspensions, I want to first talk about what the common causes of suspensions are. So Name stuffing, address issues I just talked about, virtual office spaces, misrepresentation, doing a lot of edits too fast will cause a lot of suspicious activity. Having multiple listings, account issues is another one. So sometimes it's not the listing that's the problem. Sometimes it's the account that is on the listing that's the problem, and sometimes it may feel like it's just however Google is feeling that day. So I'm going to kind of give you a couple tips as to how to identify kind of what the cause of the suspension might be to help you resolve it. And so there are clues that Google is actually putting in their suspension email that I want to draw your attention to. So sometimes you might get an email where it says, you have been suspended because of account issues. All right, great. That's the clue, account issues. So what it's talking about there is really about, okay, it's not really an issue with the listing. It's something to do with one of the profiles that is manager or an owner on that listing. So you should take a look who has access to your listing. Is there a bunch of people on there that don't need to be on there? Get them off, right? And then, go and have a look to see if any of those accounts have been restricted for whatever reason. That will be a great way for you to identify and clear that up. If the email says you've been suspended because of deceptive content, then that means it's like, misrepresentation. It could be name stuffing. Misrepresentation here is really where the data on the Google business profile and the data that Google is seeing on the internet, whether it be your website or other sites, is a mismatch, right? And so it has this, something's going on. I also see this when you have conflicting categories in your GBP. I use the example of like, oh, I'm a restaurant that is also a plumber, right? I mean, that's not really a thing, and obviously would cause issues there. Now I'm being dramatic, and I'm kind of using that as an example to illustrate the absurdity, but that happens, like where people have very disconnected business categories in their profile. A policy violation. If the email says you've been suspended because of a policy violation, all right, like that's a clue. Is it, are you operating out of a virtual office space? Do you have multiple listings where Google is saying, I'm sorry, the policy says one business, one listing? This is fairly common with multiple service area businesses. And so, it's like the distance between service area businesses could be too close. And there are ways to get around that, but that could be the cause. And then the last one, suspicious activity, right? And this is, like a little bit harder to diagnose, often, driven by lots of frequent edits in a short period of time that just look like spammy behavior, right? Like suspicious activity. So given that, I'm going to give you my 5 tips to help reinstate suspended listings. Number 1 is make sure you take the time to do the investigation to understand why it was why it was suspended in the first place. I just walked you through some tips on how to diagnose the issue. That is very important because you don't want to submit a reinstatement without having addressed the reason why it was suspended in the first place. So that's kind of issue number 2. Once you find the issue, then you got to fix the issue before you appeal. And so if this is like, if you believe that it was suspended because there's multiple business profile listings, right, and they're too close together, that can sometimes take some time to resolve. You have to work with the client. You have to make sure that they're positioned in the right place, or that you have enough evidence to submit to show that they are independently operated. Different phone numbers, different signage on their vehicles, maybe, right? So that can take some time. If the customer doesn't have any of that, they need to go out and get that evidence before you appeal. Number 3, I talked before about having different types of evidence, like L1 evidence and L2 evidence. If you're trying to appeal a suspension, you got to go with the L1 evidence, right? Like the level 2 evidence could be good enough for verification. It's not going to be good enough for suspension. And that's where you really need to kind of like spend a little bit more time to get the type of evidence that is going to really definitively prove to Google the existence and the affiliation. So you really need to lean into the higher level of evidence on that one. Number 4, be patient. I know this is hard, but creating new listings, submitting duplicate tickets, don't help. In fact, it's more likely to slow down the process than it is to speed it up. So try and refrain from taking any of these actions that would potentially cause more problems and slow down the resolution. And then number five is the best defense is a good offense, right? And by this I mean um, you know implementing best practices, uploading a lot of great relevant photos to the profile is a great way to prevent suspension. Especially because like ultimately you get all those photos after the fact and then you're submitting them as evidence. If you've already got the photos, just upload them to the listing so Google has them in their Rolodex right away, and it eliminates that gray area when Google can't decide, is it suspension, is it okay. The more information you put onto the profile, the more proactive Google can be and the more protected you are against future suspensions. Right, and then the third issue that I'll walk through is missing reviews. And so this one here, it's an issue that I've run into where reviews just disappear and you need to somehow try and get it back. Now, the complication of getting back reviews is that the review itself is actually not connected to the listing. It's not owned by the listing. It's owned by the person who left the review. And this is where, if you've ever tried to get back deleted reviews, you may have got the support agent coming to you being like, I don't know which reviews you're talking about. Like, I can't find them. You have to tell me which ones disappeared, and then I'll try and get them back. And there's some truth to that, right? I've heard some scenarios where they say the reviews are gone. Now that's not true. The reviews aren't gone. They're still there. They're just attached to the user. And so this is kind of where, if you have evidence of what review was missing, maybe you've got the email that you got when you received the review that you can provide back as evidence. That's going to be really handy, because if you can tell the support agent the review that was missing, they can now find it because the review is attached to the user, not to the profile, and it can reestablish that connection. So here I only need 3 tips here for recovering missing reviews. One is to be proactive. This is especially for the agencies, is that you need to be able to track the reviews that your clients have. I use a software product called GMB API. I like it because it's much more cost effective than the Yexts or the Uberalls or any of these other ones, right? It's run by a couple of Google blokes, which I know, and it's a great company. And part of the servicing of this tool, among others, I mean, it does a lot of great things, but one of the things that it does is it has all of your reviews, and it even shows reports of when reviews are coming in, and more importantly, when they're getting deleted. So it gives you a little bit more visibility as an agency into which profiles are actually losing reviews. And it has a export button on the reviews so that you can download the ones that have been deleted and provide that directly to support, which is actually my number 2 tip, is to provide the reviews to Google support in order to get them to be recovered. You make it easy on the support agent when you can show them exactly who the user was, what the rating was, what did it say, and then you've got all that information can be extracted out of a tool like GMB API, and it just makes your life so much easier. So I would recommend, if you don't have a tool like GMB API, I would recommend you even giving it a shot. They offer a free trial. But if you already have software like that, I think you're in a good space, because providing that evidence to support is actually what they need in order to do their job more effectively. And then number 3 is make sure that you understand why the reviews may have been deleted in the first place. Are you accidentally triggering spam signals? I'm going to assume positive intent here, and that you didn't buy a bunch of those reviews, which is why they were deleted. A lot of the times, if those reviews that you're requesting to get reinstated, if they are violating Google's terms of service, maybe they're using profanity, or maybe they're inappropriate, they're not going to come back, right? Google will maintain their position on them violating policies, but for the most part, I've been able to successfully retrieve the majority of those reviews. All right, so that gets us through. I know I'm kind of like hot on time right now, so apologize for going fast. My last section is really just about my tips on how to communicate with Google. Like the what to say and what not to say, and how to speak their language. And so for here, it's really just about getting straight to the point, using the appropriate and correct terminology, providing all the relevant information, being polite and professional. And if you need to escalate, that's okay. You can request escalation. When I left Google, we were operating out of about 10 call center locations. And each call center location had level 1 and level 2 support staff locally in those regions, right? And we have that many call centers strategically for language support, right? So I'm not going to go through where they all were. I probably would be breaking NDA to do that, but basically they were strategically placed because we supported in over 40 languages. And so it's okay to request to be escalated to a level 2 agent. They're all local. If you need to get escalated to a level 3 agent, the level 3 agent is based in the United States, and they typically deal with defects, with bugs. And so they are not client facing. You won't really get an opportunity to speak to those agents. But that's a little bit trickier. Getting escalation from a level 1 to a level 2 is very common, very easy. Just request that escalation politely. And then don't submit multiple cases. The cases infrastructure that we had would just merge those cases anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. Don't be emotional or monologue. Like any Incredibles fans out there, you got me monologuing. So don't be emotional, and don't try and hide the issue. If you were doing some naughty stuff, right? Like you're better off just kind of like explaining what you did and that you're not going to do it again, and then and don't ask for exception. Support agents aren't authorized to grant exceptions, so that's not going to go anywhere either. All right, so here's my example. When I'm requesting a reinstatement, here is the script that I follow when I request it, and so I'm going to walk you through it. So starting with the first part, I just set the stage by saying, Awesome Inc. is a moving company in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I define the name of the company, the type of company, and the location of it. I then move on to say, this listing was suspended because it was in a shared office space. This is what I was talking about a second ago, to be like, all right, like acknowledge what we believe was the issue. And basically what I'm saying here is that while the listing was in a shared office space, it's a permanent office, which is staffed between these times, which also matches the hours of operation on the profile. Now that is fine. That is okay per Google guidelines. You're allowed to have a permanent, you're allowed to work out of a virtual office space, provided it is a permanent office with permanent signage and the hours of operations match. So I'm kind of verifying that we are in accordance to the guidelines. And then finally, I talk through each piece of evidence that I've attached. So I've uploaded the trade name agreement from the Arizona Department of State. I've got an invoice that is addressed to that location's office. I've got a lease agreement showing that it's a permanent office space. That was from Regis, so that was an important piece of evidence. And then I've got some photo evidence of, the permanent signage that exists on the door, as well as, one of the vehicles outside of the office's locations. And then finally, I'm like, look, I've reviewed all the guidelines, and I'm confident that the attached evidence shows that the location was in policy. And I'm being polite, I'm being concise, I'm sharing all the information, like what do I believe the problem is? What did we do to fix it? Here's the evidence to show that I've fixed it. And thank you so much. And this particular suspension reinstatement was successful. It got approved. All right. And then the last piece of advice that I will give you is use the community. I think this is a really powerful tool. If the support track is not working, the community is a great place to be able to engage directly with product experts. And those product experts do have secret channels that they can access to escalate your case through through support staff, and in some cases directly to a Googler. So that's another important support tip that I would encourage you to keep in your back pocket. All right, and so that's what I have for you today. I'll stick around for some questions if there's some time. But what I'll leave you with is support is like a Rubik's cube. It's really complicated. It's really hard to use unless you know how to use it, right? At which point it's easy. So I'm on LinkedIn. My new company is the GBP Experts. We work directly with businesses and agencies. We do white labeled support stuff. So if you're sick and tired of dealing with support and you want us to do that for you, we white label our services to agencies. So you can hit me up on LinkedIn or on the GBP Experts. And I'd love to talk to you about what you're experiencing, or if you just want me to show you how to solve a Rubik's Cube, I could do that too. So, so thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you so much, Brad. We do have a few questions. If you have a few minutes, Brad, we can keep everything open and we can get those answered if everyone has to drop. I don't know if you have a few minutes to give or if I can.
I do. I apologize for running long, but I'll stay as long as you need.
Yeah, so Sam asked, if you don't have a physical location, can you not have a Google listing for your virtual business?
Okay, so there's a couple questions in that. So if you don't have a physical location, can you have a Google business profile? Yes, that's why we created the service area businesses. Can you work out of a virtual office space? If you are a service area business, Google doesn't care where you work. You can work out of a virtual office space. That's no problem. But you cannot have the virtual office space represent a physical location, right? Like so that's the violation in policy there. So if you're working out of a virtual office space, have your GBP listing set up as a storefront property, and you get suspended. One of the fixes could be flipping that to a service area business because now you're in compliance. So that would be fine.
Awesome. That's a good one. A follow-up to that is, how do you suggest working around GBP requirements for claiming a grocery anchored strip mall? Yeah.
Hang on, I have to unpack that one. Is that can you say that one again for me, please?
That was Eric. He said, how do you suggest working around GBP requirements for claiming a grocery anchored strip mall?
So it's interesting actually. So there's two parts to this. There is the strip mall, and then there are the businesses within the strip mall, right? And so there is a feature of GBP. It's called a relationship, and what's tricky about this particular feature is that you can't set the relationship within the UX. So you can't log into Google and set this. The only way you can set the relationship is either via the API or support can do it on the back end. And basically what it does is it allows you to associate businesses together. It was actually designed for a Starbucks inside of a Safeway, or like a McDonald's inside of a Walmart, right? Like where in order to get to that McDonald's, the Walmart has to be open. So there's a relationship between these two businesses. And when you look at your Google business profile, it actually shows up underneath and it says located in, and then it has the name of the business that it's in. So what I would do for a strip mall is I would register, I would verify the strip mall complex, the physical building of the strip mall. And then what I would do is I would actually add relationships to the businesses that are within that strip mall. And what you're telling to Google then is that all those businesses are going to have the same address, and that's what's going to look suspicious to Google, is that like, how can all these businesses have the same physical address? And if you tell Google that there is a relationship between these two businesses, that like this one is actually within this other one, then it's a real good suspension prevention technique. And so like if you who asked that question, Eric? If you want to reach out to me, Eric, on LinkedIn or whatever, I can point you in the right direction there, because it's I think that's going to solve a lot of problems, because the more information you give Google about the strip mall location or the businesses within it, it protects everybody, right? And it just makes it work a little bit more more cleanly for that. So it's that's another like largely unknown feature of GBP, but something that I can definitely help you navigate.
Perfect. Another a follow-up question. I think it's Elise. Any tips on verifying new businesses that may not have all the permanent signage and fixtures in place?
Yeah, so that my advice to that would be focus on getting the website up and running, and maybe even getting those businesses populated into other directories. So, like if you register them on the Better Business Bureau, get them on Yelp, um, get them on these other citation networks. And so when you do that, if you do that and then you wait a couple weeks, like wait 2 weeks, then you go through the GBP verification, Google will already have information that it has in its index, in its database to leverage. And it will likely then give you real-time verification options, like a phone or an email-based options. And so if that's the case, don't have to worry about signage, right? Because you're leveraging all of this other information, and Google is able to verify the existence of the business using other information. So it makes the verification process a lot easier. If real-time verification isn't available and you have to do video-based verification, then I don't know of a way around having permanent signage, right? Because this is the visual evidence that Google is requiring and that stems back to a philosophy that we had in the Maps team 10 years ago, which was, like we wanted Google Maps to be a digital representation of the physical world. And so, like, we wanted, like, if you go on Google Maps and you drop the little man and you look at Street View on there, it should be the same as if you're physically standing in front of that space and having a look around. And so, Google wants to know that if they send a customer to that location, that they're going to find your business, and the signage is a way for them to kind of prove that that's where you are. So, I don't know a way around that if you're going through video-based verification. And in many cases, I work with my clients to just try and expedite the creation and installation of permanent signage, because it's going to make the verification process go a lot smoother.
Perfect. And then one more question we have. Can you do a GMB for multiple location, and what's the process for this?
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, but it's kind of a loaded question, right? Because it's how close in proximity can those listings be? And so if it's a physical business, like a storefront business, they could be right next to each other if you want. There's no real kind of like geographic requirements for those. In fact, I remember a scenario where we accidentally merged two Starbucks locations because we thought they were literally across the street from each other, right? Like literally. And we thought it was the same business. Nope. It turns out they just had two Starbucks locations literally across the street from each other. So there is no restrictions on physical locations, right? Like you can have them right next to each other if you like. If it's a service area business, then the policy of one Google business profile per business comes into effect. And so this is where Google's guidelines there, they like to have the service area businesses separated by about a 2-hour drive time. That's what they say, right? 2 hours in drive time. In reality, I've gotten listings, a lot closer than that, because there's a lot of variables that go into play when kind of like strategically placing multiple listings. And those parameters primarily are population, right? So like how densely populated that area is. Like you think Manhattan, New York, right? And it's like, oh, okay, I can have a couple of different service areas. It's going to it's so densely populated that it makes sense that there are actually a couple of different service areas in that location. And then the second parameter is competitive landscape, right? So like how many competitors are in that geography. So, population and landscape and competitive landscape are kind of the parameters. And so working within that, you kind of need to be strategic around where you place these service area businesses. And if it's too close together, then Google will consider that to be a violation of their one listing per business policy, unless you can actually prove that they are independently operated, right? That's kind of the key. So there's some tips that I can give you to kind of show that as evidence. So for example, have each of these locations with a different localized phone number, right? Like different area codes. Maybe if it's a service area business where you have branded vehicles, have slight variations on the branded vehicles. Maybe, some vehicles have that location's phone number, maybe with even the location written on the side of the vehicle, and have them be separated. Because the more visual you can make that these are independently operated businesses, even though they're under the same brand, that's what Google is looking for as evidence that they're independently managed. And if they're independently managed locations, then it's okay. Then it's not a violation of policy. So, I mean, the complication with this question is that every scenario is a little bit different, and it kind of depends. So this is where, if you're interested in getting some more advice, you can just hit up the GBP experts, and would be happy to kind of like guide you through what we would recommend that is likely going to not throw up any major red flags with Google and the algorithms. So, well, I can't hear you. Is it just me?
It's me. I'm the problem. Thank you guys so much for the attendance. I would say, Brad, I know that we went over, but very much needed a lot of great information for our agencies. Obviously, these are issues and pain points they're dealing with, so you gave a lot of great suggestions. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. This was our last session for the evening. A recap will go out next Wednesday, and it will have access to to rewatch any of the videos as well as any of the decks shared from our speakers. I want to thank you again for your time today. These sessions were uniquely curated to help agencies get access to the insights, expertise, and information that they needed to overcome any challenges they're facing, but also to prepare for the evolving market as we finish up 2025 and head into 2026. Thank you, Brad. So lucky you were able to join us today. Great session. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the evening, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.